Time for our latest edition of Short and Sweet. Today we're telling the story of a beloved singer-songwriter who we lost a few years ago. He spent years bouncing around the southern U.S. struggling to find his voice before he invented an entire lifestyle built on relaxation and escapism, and people loved him for it. This Alabama-raised dreamer crafted a sound that he called Gulf and Western, mixing down home storytelling with Caribbean rhythms and beach town philosophy that turned into something more than a musician. His laid-back melodies and tales of coastal living created a fantasy world that millions wanted to be a part of. And man, he turned his concerts into parties and his brand into an empire. It's a journey from dive bars to billion-dollar businesses, from a song that all the bigwigs said was a terrible idea that actually became a multi-billion-dollar franchise. Let's get into it. Hey, music junkies. It's our latest edition of Short and Sweet, where we break down a legendary artist in 10 minutes or less. I don't think I've done it yet, but I'm going to try here. We celebrate the great Jimmy Buffett and three of his greatest tracks. Let's get into it. Jimmy Buffett was a musician who transcended music itself to become a lifestyle icon. I mean, Jimmy didn't follow the traditional path to success. He wasn't trying to be the next big rock star. Rather, he slowly built a persona and sound that was entirely his own. And it took years of fumbling around to get there, though. But by the time he found his voice, he had created something nobody else could actually replicate. The story begins in Mississippi and Mobile, Alabama, where Jimmy Buffett was raised. Music was always a part of his life, but so was a restless spirit that would follow everything he did. In the late 60s, Jimmy moved to Nashville to try his hand at country music. He actually landed a job as a Nashville correspondent for Billboard magazine, if you could believe that. This gave him industry connections and insight into how the music world worked. In 1970, Barnaby Records gave him a shot, though, releasing his debut album, Down to Earth. The record was poorly produced, and it went absolutely nowhere. Then a follow-up came out, it fared no better. Jimmy was just another struggling songwriter in a city that was full of them, and it looked like his music career was going to be over before it even started. But Jimmy made a decision that changed everything. He left Nashville, and he moved to Key West, Florida, settling into a laid-back beach town that would become central to his identity. Now, at first life in Key West, it wasn't glamorous. Jimmy later admitted he was involved in smuggling to make ends meet. But then ABC Records offered him $25,000 to make an album. Jimmy went to Nashville and recorded a white sport coat and a pink crustacean for just $10,000, and then he used the remaining money to buy a boat. That album, released in 1973, it was a start of something, a little something. Included story songs about misdemeanors and coastal living, along with the tune, Why Don't We Get Drunk and Screw, which Jimmy credited to a fictional alter ego named Marvin Gardens.
Why don't we get drunk and screw?
The song, that gained notoriety, but more importantly, Jimmy was starting to find his voice and his audience. His 1974 album, Living and Dying in 3/4 Time, included Come Monday. This is a thoughtful song about marital separation that became his first single chart entry into the top 30.
So come Monday, it'll be all right.
Jimmy was showing that he could really balance humor with genuine emotion. He followed that up with A1A, named after the Florida Beach Access Road, establishing his identity as the chronicler of Key West life. Jimmy described his evolution simply, saying that he never planned to make a whole series of albums about Key West. It just happened naturally. Now, by 1975, he formed the Coral Reef Band, and together they were developing a sound that mixed country, rock, and Caribbean rhythms in a way nobody else was doing at the time. Then came 1977, and the album that changed everything. Changes in Latitudes, Changes in Attitudes. The record spawned Margaritaville, a laid-back anthem about coastal slacking that captured a fantasy that millions of people wanted to live. This song became a top 10 hit and sold over 1 million copies.
Wasting away again in Margaritaville.
And from there, Jimmy Buffett wasn't a musician at all. He became a lifestyle. Margaritaville was the song that truly defined him, though. It was the perfect flow of his beach bum philosophy. He followed it up with Son of a Sailor in 1978, and also had the top 10 with Cheeseburger in Paradise and Livingston Saturday Night.
Cheeseburger in Paradise. Son of a sailor.
I mean, for a brief moment in the late 70s, Jimmy Buffett was a genuine pop star. But by the early 80s, his albums stopped going gold and mainstream success, it faded. He wasn't played on the radio. Radio moved on to other sounds, and Jimmy briefly, he tried the country market again, but he didn't have much luck. Then something interesting happened. While his record sales declined, his concert tours were growing bigger and bigger every time. A devoted core of fans in the Sun Belt, who Jimmy dubbed Parrotheads, began treating shows like Mardi Gras, like celebrations. But these weren't just concerts. They were parties, complete with festive shirts and beach balls and nonstop margaritas. And of course, Jimmy leaned into it, playing the same beloved songs year after year because that's what his fans wanted. In the 90s, Jimmy transformed from touring musician into full-blown entrepreneur. He launched his Margaritaville clothing line, and he opened margarita clubs and restaurants, and he turned his fantasy beach lifestyle into a billion-dollar brand. He also became a successful novelist, and he landed on the bestseller lists. And then for the next 2 decades, Jimmy continued touring relentlessly, and he expanded his business empire from there. Sadly, we lost Jimmy Buffett on September 1st, 2023 at 76 years of age. Jimmy Buffett's legacy, though, isn't just his music. It's the entire world he built around it and the way his persona and convictions helped us escape the mundane and all the divisiveness. Here are my top 3 Jimmy Buffett picks. All right, coming in at number 3, it's Come Monday.
Come Monday, I'll be holding you tight.
As it turns out, Jimmy Buffett's signature escapist sound was forged in a moment of utter desperation. This was a dramatic revelation that he actually shared on David Letterman's show in 1983. At the time of its composition, 10 years before in 73, Jimmy Buffett was a struggling musician on the road. He was recently divorced. He was disillusioned with the rock and roll lifestyle. Nothing was working out. Facing an existential crisis, and it led him to contemplate taking his own life. Buffett confessed that the act of writing Come Monday in a lonely Howard Johnson's motel in Marin County, California, was actually what saved his life.
I guess I never was meant for glitter rock and roll.
The song, a heartfelt ballad for his future wife Jane Slugsville, became the hope on the horizon that pulled him back from the brink.
And I just want you back by my side.
Released in 1974 on the album Living and Dying in 3/4 Time, Come Monday became the struggling artist's first genuine hit. It actually achieved a peak position at number 30 in the Billboard Hot 100, signifying his breakthrough to a national audience.
That's the reason I just let you go.
And then it soared to number 3 on the adult contemporary chart, establishing the distinctive, mellow, sincere ballad style that would really define his future appeal. This chart success literally allowed him to pay the rent, and as he famously quipped, "Get my dog out of the pound," and it directly launched the legendary career that would follow.
And I just want you back by my side.
All right, jumping into number 2, our bridesmaid position, I gotta go with a true classic, Cheeseburger in Paradise. Jimmy Buffett said about this song, and I quote, "The myth of the cheeseburger in paradise goes back to a long trip on my first boat, the Euphoria. We run into some very rough weather crossing the Mona Passage between Hispaniola and Puerto Rico and broke our new bowsprit. The ice in our box had melted, and we were doing the canned food and peanut butter diet. The vision of a piping hot cheeseburger kept popping into my mind at that point. We limped up the Sir Francis Drake Channel onto the road town on the island of Tortola, where a brand new marina and a bar sat on the end of a dock like a mirage. We secured the boat, we kissed the ground, and headed to the restaurant." Now, to Jimmy's amazement, they were offered a menu that included an American cheeseburger and pina coladas. Now, according to Buffett, these were the days when supplies were scarce, when horse meat was more accessible than ground beef in the tiny stores of the third world. So it was a pleasant surprise. Now, Jimmy gave the waiter specific instructions on exactly how they wanted the burgers cooked and what they wanted on them. But of course, when the burgers came back, those instructions had been completely ignored. But Jimmy said it didn't matter at all. Those overdone burgers on the burned toast buns tasted like manna from heaven to him. The song later went on to inspire the Buffett-themed restaurant chain Cheeseburger in Paradise, which at its peak had more than 30 locations throughout the U.S. and one in Australia. As for the charts, Cheeseburger in Paradise that landed at number 32 on the Billboard Hot 100. I love that story, too. Coming in at number 1, I mean, you know I had to go with Margaritaville, the song that built a multi-billion-dollar empire.
But I know it's nobody's fault.
Now, Jimmy Buffett wrote this track in Key West, Florida after finishing a tour with the Coral Reefer Band. They had just toured Texas, and Buffett spent some time drinking margaritas in a Mexican restaurant before heading back to Key West. When he got there, he sat at the old Anchor Inn watching gridlock on the roads and used it as inspiration.
Searching for my lost sugar salt.
Buffett recorded the song at Criteria Studios in Miami with producer Norbert Putnam. I've actually talked to Norbert before. When Buffett asked Putnam to work on an album about a carefree lifestyle by the water, Putnam told him straight up, if you're going to do that, you've got to be recording it near the water so that you can pull it off. So Miami it was.
Watching the sun bake.
Putnam recalled, and I'm going to quote him exactly, "One day in the studio, Jimmy comes in and starts telling me about a day he had in Key West. He was coming home from a bar and he lost one of his flip-flops and he stepped on a beer can top and he couldn't find the salt for his margarita. Pretty bad day. He says he's writing lyrics to it and I say, that's a terrible idea for a song. He comes back in a few days later with Wasted Away Again in Margaritaville and plays it right then, and everybody knows it's a hit song. Hell, it wasn't a song, it was a movie. It was a franchise."
Flip-flop. Stepped on a pop-top.
And Putnam was completely right. For decades, people have been lining up to get tickets to that one. Of course, the song's popularity led to a billion-dollar chain of resorts, restaurants, and retirement communities. His producer and some of the execs from the label, like I said, they thought the song was a terrible idea. It turned into a billion-dollar enterprise, so just remember that.
Wasting away again in Margaritaville.
An anthem of escapism became the engine of a massive global brand. Who would have thought that an empire could be built from a beach bum's daydream? Only Jimmy Buffett, man. I love Jimmy Buffett. I love his music. There were some haters out there back in the day, but man, if you're giving music to the people that make them feel good, what's wrong with that? I mean, we need some of that Jimmy Buffett optimism right now more than ever. Love you, Jimmy. Rest in peace, my friend. Till next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.